So now let's take a look at how we can actually use this as a nanomesh brush. The first thing that we need to do is we need to turn this into a insert multi-mesh brush. So remember, anytime that you've got a Z tool that has multiple subtools, if you go to the brush menu, you come down here and create insert multi-mesh brush, it will create an insert multi-mesh brush from this model. So if I press the M key now, you see I've got actually two meshes, each of those two subtools, which can then be inserted. Now, we have to turn this into a nanomesh brush. So if I go to brush, create nanomesh brush, that'll take my current brush and then turn it into a nanomesh brush. So now we're going to be able to actually use this in ZModeler as an insert nanomesh. So let's take a look at how to do that now. So now we're going to take a look at how to actually apply the nanomesh to the vest. So I've got the vest selected. I'll just solo it here. Go into frame mode, and you can see that we've got a different polygroup for each shell. Unfortunately, the inner and outer shells are actually quite similar polygroups. So if we Control Shift click, we should be able to actually isolate these. So let's go ahead and hide the outermost one. Control Shift, there we go. Let's isolate the inner one, go to polygroups, and click Group Visible just to give it a very clear delineation. So we've got our nanomesh brush selected. What I'm going to do is going to press the space bar, and you see we've got Insert Nanomesh selected. And let's do Polygroup Island, or we could do Polygroup All. If I go into the nanomesh submenu here, and if you watch, I'm just going to press the M key, and this gives me the choice of my two objects to insert. I will start with the ring, click and drag, and this will drag out the individual rings on each one of those faces. Now if I want to increase the number, I can just add a subdivision level here, delete lower, and then do the same thing. And now you see we've got more rings because we have more individual subdivision levels. If I go into the nanomesh controls here, I can actually change from proportional mode to fit mode, fill, etc. We'll leave it on proportional. We can actually make some changes here. It's at 0.656 size right now. I can actually change the sizing with the slider. I could also change the width. Let's set that back to 1. And we've got our various offsets here. For example, here's the Z offset. We've got rotation, which could be quite cool, especially if you're creating something like feathers. Actually, that's quite an interesting shape there, the way we've got them offset, but we'll set that back to 0. We've also got our variation, so we can add variation to the width, length, etc. Any number of these we can actually vary to create some irregularities. We can flip things horizontally and vertically, which won't really be visible for this because it's a ring. And of course we can tile per each face. So if I turn this up, we can actually tile how many of those appear on each face, but that's going to ruin sort of the chain link appearance, so we'll leave that turned off. So there we go. I'm quite happy with this at this stage. So I'm going to click Freeze Placement. And let's go ahead and press the M key. And now we'll select the second piece. I'm going to go ahead and click drag to draw this into place. There we go. So you see we get our deeper connector linkage level. Now I can adjust things like my Y offset, Z offset. If I want to bring them further out, I might actually do that so they're sitting a little bit closer to the surface but not on the surface. When I'm happy with that, I will click Freeze Placement. So there we go. But I've got my original sort of placeholder geometry, that geometry vest that I made, sitting underneath. And I actually want to get rid of that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Geometry. I'm going to go to Modify Topology, and I'm going to click BPR. Oh, it's up here. Convert BPR to Geo. It used to be down here, but it's been moved. So if I go to Geometry, convert BPR to Geo, that will actually create geometry from that nanomesh. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to hide all these polygroups, the inner shell, the thickness, and I'm going to have to kind of get in here and click. Nope, don't want that. I want to actually get my inner shell. There we go. So now I've only got my nanomesh, so we can actually see through that quite nicely. Now I'm just going to go to Geometry, Modify Topology, and click Delete Hidden. Now all we've got is our nanomesh shell, and it's actually proper geometry at this point. So I can take the move brush, I can shift it around using the move brush, bring it out if I want it sitting on top of this piece of vest here. There we go. And we can turn on our other piece, which will eventually sit on top of it. Bring that forward so it's sitting on top. So there we go. So that's how we can use nanomesh to create that chain link vest that you see sitting underneath the other layers of clothing on this particular character.